I'm starting out by cutting my 6 3.5-inch squares and 12 2-inch squares of my background fabric. So I tend to oversize a square like that and then turn it around and through 180 degrees. Then I can put the 3.5 on the edges and trim it. And that's the general way I cut my squares. Because you need so many, you can start with a strip, a 3.5-inch strip, and then a 2-inch strip for the others. Next I'm cutting fabric 13, the green fabric, and because both of my pieces have got one dimension the same, 3.5, I can cut a strip at 3.5 and then subcut the pieces from that. So from my 3.5-inch wide strip, I've cut 1 C rectangle, 2 C rectangles, they're cut on the 2-inch line, and now I'm going to cut my D rectangle, and that's a 6.5-inch wide. So with my ruler being 6.5 inches, I can use the width of the ruler. If you've got a 6-inch ruler, just turn your ruler around like that, and then you use your ruler in that direction. So that's my fabric 13 pieces. Now I'm going to cut the square of fabric 21. I need 2 squares, 3.5 inches. Looks like I have a little piece here sticking out, so I'm going to make use of that. So 2 3.5 inches is 7 inches, so I allow myself at least 7 inches. I'm lining that up with my little cross there, and 3.5 this way. So I'll cut that. So now I know that, oops, let's just trim that up. So this edge and this edge are straight. So if I take this and turn it through 180 degrees, then I can put my 3.5-inch line on the edge and 3.5-inch line on the bottom. Cut up here and across there for 1 square. And then do the same again for the second square. 3.5, 3.5, cut there, cut there. So there's my 2 squares of fabric number 21. And on my printout it came out quite blue, and I had to go back to my screen to check. It's definitely the turquoisey one. I'm going to show you 2 different techniques for doing the half square triangles. My traditional usual technique has always been to start off with a square of each fabric and then sew on the diagonal. So if you're going to do that, you'll need 2 3/4 inch squares. So I've cut my squares here. I've drawn a line on the diagonal, and then I've drawn a line 1/4 inch on either side. So to do that, you just get your ruler and put your 1/4 inch line here on the center, draw a line there, and then do the same on the other side. Put your 1/4 inch line down the center, draw a line there. The next step is going to be to sew down this line and this line. I've just got my needle in the center position and an ordinary foot on. This is actually quite a nice open foot, so I can see what I'm doing. Now that I've sewn on the 2 outer lines, I'm going to cut on the centre line. Then open it out and press. And now this needs to be trimmed. Now to trim it, I've got a ruler here that has a 45-degree line coming right through the corner. So I'm going to put that line on my seam. Now I'm going to be trimming this down to 2 inches. So therefore I want to make sure that I can see my 2-inch line on top of fabric. And that means I'm going to have enough. So I'm going to cut off these 2 corners first. Then turn this around through 180 degrees. Put the ruler back on with the 2-inch line right on the edges here. And my seam line should still be underneath this 45-degree line. Cut this way and this way. So you can get away with starting with slightly smaller squares, but I always like to leave myself plenty of room. The 2 squares that we started with will end up giving us 2 half-square triangle units. Now, using one of these Creative Grids rulers makes the half-square triangles really easy to do. And all you need to do is have a 2-inch strip, and so you can cut both of your triangles at the same time. You can actually cut more than 2, but I'm going to just show you these 2. I'm going to put my ruler on with the 2-inch line on the bottom here. Now here I'm just using my folded corner clipper, which will take you up to 5 inches, but the half-square triangle ruler is more or less the same thing. It goes up to 8.5 inches, and it's also got these smaller markings in between. So I'm putting the 2-inch line of my ruler on the bottom and cutting on the left and the right. And then to cut my next pieces, I can turn the ruler around, put the 2-inch line on the top, line the edge up with the edge I've just cut. Sometimes you have to just correct that if you've gone a little bit off, but this one, first one's fine. And then just cut on the right. Turn the ruler again and cut on the right. So you just work your way down your 2-inch strip, cutting half-square triangles. I'm going to now clip this corner as well. And you can see that this vertical line lines up with the blunt tip there. And that is a nice little key to make the piecing really, really easy. Now when I sew with my 1/4-inch seam from this point down to this point, and I open it out, I don't need to trim anything at all, it's all done. So the first thing I'm going to do is to sew my half-square triangles together. I'm taking a pink and a yellow, putting them together and then sewing, and so we'll be making 16 half-square triangle units. And I really like to chain sew, so I'm just going to whiz all these through at the same time. And then these should measure 2 inches, which is the same as our background squares. So now I'm going to make 2 of this unit. One's going to go here and one's going to go down here. So I've got my F, which is the pink, here and here. And then I'm going to pop that there and that there. And to make this unit here, we're going to have the F in that direction, there and there, and our background B there and there. So now we've sewn those together, we're just going to join these two seams here and here. Now I'm going to sew A, E and A together, and I'm making 2 of those. Now I'm going to press these outwards towards A, because this section here I'm going to press in towards the centre D. Now for this centre section I'm going to make 2 units like this with B on top and F like that, and 2 units with B on top and F like this. And for this unit here I'm going to get a C rectangle, which is one of my small ones here, and I'm going to put one of my half square triangles there and one there like that. So I'm going to join these 2 together first and then join them onto that. Now it's easier if you press this in the other direction, then you've got some seams that can nest up together. And I'm sewing the yellow side together. Okay, now this seam doesn't really matter which way, or you can press it open. With it being quite chunky because of all these seams meeting here, I'm going to do mine open. And now I'm going to join it onto the rectangle. So I'm going to pin at both ends just to make sure everything's lined up nicely. So you're going to make 2 sections like that for the top and the bottom. And then the pieces alongside have a B square and a half square triangle unit. And just be careful that the F fabric is pointing in the correct direction when you sew them together. So once you've got those 2 made, you can then assemble the top and bottom sections. I'm going to press these towards the B squares and this towards the C rectangle. I just find that pressing towards a flatter piece rather than all the ones with all the seams is going to help everything to sit better. Then we're going to sew these 2 seams on either side, and we're making 2 of these units. Now these 2 pieces are made, I'm going to sew them top and bottom of my centre rectangle. Then I'll just put a pin in the centre to keep it all in place, and we can sew this seam and then this seam here. I've made my centre, and now I'm going to add these units on either side of the centre. And now we're doing the final step, which is to sew the left and right sections on with the pink pointing towards the centre.